Hi guys and girls, I'm Obsidian Ant and welcome back to Elite Dangerous. PowerPlay arrived back in 2015 as a part of patch 1.3 and it certainly seems to be a long time ago at this point. Initially it wasn't entirely well received, but nonetheless over time it gained its fair share of players. That said, there's still areas that could certainly do with a lot of improvement, and even to this day it doesn't have a very good reputation. Now though, it appears that this is something that may be changing as a part of Chapter 4 with some improvements on the way. Today Frontier released some new information on potential changes to the PowerPlay system, and let's get one of the most controversial of those potential changes out of the way first. Frontier are seriously considering making PowerPlay open mode only, meaning that players wouldn't be able to influence PowerPlay in any way from private or solo modes. A significant change then that may come as a surprise to a lot of you, and I'll discuss this particular aspect further into the video. For now though, let's take a look at some of the other proposed changes. Do keep in mind though that all of the following is purely proposals at the moment. Nothing of this is set in stone by any means. And before we go too deeply into this, I do want to preface the rest of the video with the fact that I don't actively play PowerPlay. However, it does seem to me that, on the surface at least, these changes are going to be far and wide-reaching. Firstly then, the preparation cycle is likely to be split in two. Currently, a cycle within PowerPlay lasts 7 days, completed on a Thursday of each week. During this period, a number of actions will be engaged with, and one of these is preparation. This is where supporters of a power prepare for a new system for expansion. The change here then will be to make the first half of the cycle aimed at preparation, after which in the second half of the cycle, preparation values would lock and voting for expansion would open. This brings us on to a new voting ability, and this is the ability to veto a prepared system. Players with a high enough PowerPlay rank, and currently they're proposing around rank 2, will have the ability to use their veto. If a system ends up with more veto votes than support votes, then that system will be removed from preparation, and this will allow supporters of a PowerPlay, or supporters of a power rather, to better direct how and where they want the expansion to take place. Next up is a change to the profitability multiplier. So a system's base profitability will have an effect on votes, withdraw votes and preparation success. On top of this, both votes and success will be increased by a value factor of 10. So these two changes will make it difficult for players within any one faction, or any one power rather, to work against their own power through sabotage actions. It also means that players working towards the best interests of a power will have a far larger effect on the power. Now, Frontier are also looking at undermining, and this will have an effect on command capital. All systems currently controlled by a power earn that power command capital. This is also known as CC. This makes controlled systems, and by extension exploited systems, very valuable resources. Opposing powers can undermine a system, thereby reducing the current controlling power's CC. So players can do this in a number of ways, and one of the perhaps most notable examples of this is to interdict PowerPlay specific ships and destroy them. Doing so increases the chances of undermining a system. Supporters of a power can oppose any undermining attempts by fortifying, and they can do this for example by delivering propaganda leaflets. Now undermining is another area that will likely be changing. The idea here is that if the undermining of a particular system is 100% higher than its fortification, then that system will automatically be undermined, even if that system has also already reached its fortification threshold. The reason for this is that as things currently stand, once a system is controlled, it can be very difficult for things to change. In Frontier's own words, PowerPlay can tend towards stagnation, and this change will get around the problem by making undermining a guaranteed success if players achieve high enough numbers. Controlling a system not only generates CC, but it also costs CC. This is a form of upkeep, preventing fully unchecked expansion. If a power doesn't have enough command capital to maintain a system, then they will eventually lose it. There are some proposed changes to change upkeep costs, however. First, overhead upkeep is going to be removed. Second, the distance modifier for systems is going to increase. The distance modifier means that the further away a system is, the more CC it will actually cost. These two changes together essentially mean that expansion will be cheaper overall, whilst costs will be far less complex and much easier to predict. So it's well known that PowerPlay is often criticised for not having much in variety in terms of gameplay. Many players cite unending propaganda delivery or interdictions as good examples of this. With that in mind then, Frontier are considering allowing missions to influence power play. In short, in systems where a faction shares the same superpower allegiance as a power, then completing the missions in these systems will award a success. Now, different mission types will grant different types of success, and these successes can be applied to expansion, opposition and fortification. So this will probably be one of those most welcome changes for the overall revamp, as it means power play would become far more varied, and also it means it become a lot easier to engage with for players of all types. Overall then, all of these changes seem aimed at two things: making power play more interesting and keeping it moving at a rapid pace. Personally, I don't engage with power play as I said early on, but there are certainly enough good changes here to make me rethink that and go and take a look. It also seems that these changes will mean it will be far more likely that systems will change hands between powers at a much faster rate than they currently do, and this in turn will make for a far more dynamic game. It's also interesting to note that the entire power play system will become far more directed and predictable. That is, of course, assuming players can band together to achieve a desired goal. So yes, some very positive changes here. Without a doubt though, the biggest highlight of these changes, as I mentioned right at the beginning of this video, is the proposal to make power play a open-only feature. And this is how that would work. Firstly, power play contacts would only be visible in open mode. Anyone in solo or private would essentially not be able to access power play. Secondly, any vouchers or commodities gained from power play would be automatically destroyed when a player enters solo or private modes. Now, making power play open mode only is something that players have been calling for since day one. The reason Frontier are now considering this is because power play was primarily created as a system for consensual PvP, and the solo and private modes kind of get in the way of that. Currently, the idea has a massive amount of support among the communities online, with many people saying it will be a very good change for power play, and perhaps the game as a whole. Again, I don't engage in power play, but I can see where people are coming from, and I can certainly relate to their points. It really is a bold move from Frontier. There would of course quite naturally be a lot of concern that this is a massive change for the game. After all, Frontier have always and repeatedly stated that they see all game modes as equal, and this change will mean that Frontier see modes as different to each other. Already there are a lot of calls from players to make the background sim exclusive to open mode, along with a few calls for community goals to also be open only. But Frontier have jumped in very quickly on this, and categorically state that power play is the only thing being considered for open mode. Now, it's rare for Frontier to make a plain and simple statement like that, so I feel it's pretty much a certain thing that no other gameplay will become mode exclusive. However, that's not to say that open-only mode won't bring with it other issues. For example, this will almost certainly affect certain console players, specifically because both the console platforms require subscription for online play for most games. Elite Dangerous is in an interesting position with this though, because it doesn't require subscription for solo mode. What this means then is that console players will effectively be locked out of power play unless they have a premium service subscription. Now, this is of course down to Sony and Microsoft's business model and not Frontier's. However, I do feel it is a valid point. But that said, ultimately it may not affect that many players. There's also a number of other potential issues as well, but I won't cover them just yet. Do let me know your thoughts and feelings on this though. I think it'd be really interesting to hear what you've all got to say. Now, this is entirely a massive change to power play, and on initial inspection at least, it looks to bring some changes that will please a lot of players. Not only does it have the potential to bring a lot of life to what, in my opinion, is a dull area of the game, it will also open up room for emergent gameplay, which is very much needed. So like I say, do let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.